Oh my god. I am never gonna financially recover from this.
$227. That is the total cost of all of the DLC for Stellaris combined before tax. With a price tag like that, split between 17 separate DLCs, released and updated over the course of 7 years, it can feel overwhelming financially and content-wise when trying to choose which one to get. It doesn't help that the Stellaris community has a long history of using the reviews of each DLC to give their opinions on the free updates and changes that come with each DLC. Using the reviews as a way to communicate with devs whether the community liked the changes they made or not is probably by far the fastest way to do this and the most direct way to do this, but it does make it so that using reviews on Steam to determine what expansion to get unhelpful and honestly a waste of time. In this video, I'll be summarizing very briefly the content of each DLC, and I'll be putting them in the order of which I would purchase them, as if I was buying them from scratch. I will not be doing a traditional tier list as they are both overdone and not as helpful as a simple order list in my opinion, and I'll be making a different version of this for the console edition as due to the limitations of that hardware, some DLC is worth more on console than it is on PC, and vice versa. I will also be taking into account the cost of the DLC and what it offers for its price. I will try to remove my bias with the exception of one DLC, which I will wholeheartedly shove my bias into, and I'll explain why. So let's start with the first one, which to the surprise of no one, is the Infinite Frontiers Utopia expansion. In my opinion, Utopia is effectively part of the base game. You shouldn't even purchase the base game without getting this expansion. It adds core essentials to the Stellaris experience, like Dyson Spheres and Ring Worlds, letting you manage and control purging and the rights of your citizens. It adds multiple different civics, introducing hive minds and habitats. And while that is already a lot of extra content, when Origins were introduced to the game, Utopia received 3 Origins without an increase of cost. The Origins that it received were the Mechanist Origin, which starts you out with the ability to build robots and gives you several robot pops. Syncretic Evolution, which starts you out with a secondary servile species on your planet. And Tree of Life, which gives you a Tree of Life sapling, and you get massive bonuses whenever you have these on your planets, and massive downsides whenever you don't have them on your planets. Honestly, I don't even know why you would play Stellaris without this expansion, but I guess it's doable. The second DLC I would purchase may surprise a few people, and it would be Distant Stars. This is a rather small DLC, but its price is also rather small. Basically, this DLC just adds some more story mechanics and storylines to the game. I don't want to spoil too much, but you'll discover Lovecraftian beasts and unique planets. On top of that, it adds the L Cluster, which has multiple different unique storylines, and adds a very interesting aspect when it comes to traveling through L gates, which unlike normal gateways, you only need to control one side to travel through it, which effectively makes it a long-distance hyperlane. Without this small story pack, the game feels pretty empty, story-wise at least, and that's why I put it at number 2. Apocalypse is up at number 3, and honestly, I was really tempted to put this down lower, and I feel that most of the positive reviews on Steam for this DLC are because this DLC came with an unbelievable amount of free features added to the base game when it was released, which made it feel much more substantial than it really was. The only reason why I put this in number 3, and if you can go without it, I would bump it down to the bottom of the list, is planet cracking. Cracking planets is such a core part of Stellaris that I find that most players can't go without it. This expansion also received 2 Origins whenever Origins were introduced to the game. The 2 Origins added were Life-Seeded, which starts your species out on a Gaia world, but with the downside that your species prefers Gaia worlds, causing general negative effects on other planets. And Post-Apocalyptic, which is effectively the opposite of Life-Seeded, and starts you out on a Tomb world, but gives you the Survivor trait, which gives you quite a few benefits. This does add Marauders as well to the game, which are effectively space Mongol empires, and a few civics and ascension perks were also added. For the price compared to some other DLCs of the same price range, this just doesn't add nearly as much. In fourth, I would put Federations. This DLC really focuses on flushing out the galactic community and, what should be obvious from the name of the expansion, the Federation aspect of the game. Surprisingly, this expansion quietly added a whopping 8 origins, which is insane when you realize this expansion wasn't even supposed to focus on origins. The 8 origins included are the Remnants origin, which starts your species out on a relic world, which is effectively a broken down Ecumenopolis. Think Coruscant if you're new to Stellaris. And Common Ground, which starts your species out as part of a federation built off of common cause and friendship. There is also the opposite of this, which is the Hegemon origin, which starts your empire out as part of a hegemony federation, where you are the head of it, built off of political oppression. The Doomsday origin, which starts your species out on a planet that is going to blow up within 35 to 45 years. The On the Shoulders of Giants origin, which I will not go in detail on as it's a pretty fantastic story that you should experience for yourself. The Scion origin, which starts your empire out as a vassal or protectorate of a fallen empire that will come to your aid when things get really bad, but otherwise will just kind of sit back. The Shattered Ring origin, which starts your species out on a section of a broken ring world. And finally, Void Dwellers, a personal favorite of mine, where your species starts out on 3 habitats after what seems to be some solar system-wide calamity that destroyed your homeworld and some other planets. Federations is a pretty important addition to the game, but you can live without it if you need to. And that being said, after this point, I would say nothing is absolutely necessary for a good experience, it just improves your experience. In fifth, we have the only DLC that I let my own bias determine, and that is Synthetic Dawn. This lets you play as robots, and I really shouldn't have to say anything else past that. It literally lets you play as Skynet or have people as pets. What more could you ask for? As a side note, this does add the Origin resource consolidation, which starts you out on a machine world, and interestingly enough, it adds 8 robot portraits, as you will need to get the Lithoids, Necroids, Aquatics, and Toxoids species packs to get their respective robots. At 6th, I have the Overlord expansion. This expansion was substantial and adds quite a bit of content. It adds 5 new origins. Those origins being Imperial Fiefdom, which allows you to play as the vassal of an advanced empire, and you get to select what kind of specialty vassal you will be. Slingshot to the Stars, which gives you a quantum catapult really close to your home system that you can repair very early on. Subterranean, which is exactly what it sounds like and lets you play as a subterranean civilization that lives underground. Teachers of the Shroud, where your species starts out as psionic and has contact with the Shroudwalker Enclave, which is added in this DLC. And Progenitor Hive, which is a very unique hive mind that lets you divide your empire up and gives your drones some level of autonomy. Orbital rings, hyperrelays, and the quantum catapult were the megastructures added in this expansion. The quantum catapult at its release was pretty much a joke, and it has been slowly improving where there are now some builds where you can actually use the origin that gives you a quantum catapult at the start effectively. But personally, I think that the orbital rings and hyperrelays are borderline essentials for this game. You don't need them yet, but it's such a high quality of life issue that this is slowly creeping its way up into the essential category. 3 kinds of enclaves are also introduced in this expansion. The mercenaries that you can create and sell their services out to other empires or yourself. The Shroudwalkers, which were previously mentioned that let you connect with the Shroud. And finally, the Salvagers that let you get some of the ships you have lost back, get some resources for the ships that you have, and a couple of other things. More importantly, this introduced the 3 specialty vassal types that let you center your vassals around either building up their economy, military, or technology, and then exchanging other goods with them in exchange for those bonuses. While this does sound like a lot, and it is a lot, Remember that Federations introduced 8 origins, while this expansion only added 5. In 7th, I have the Megacorp expansion. It shouldn't surprise you that the core features of this DLC are all about adding and implementing the new government type, Megacorps. This government type has a rather different gameplay strategy, and in my opinion was pulled off pretty well. This expansion also added the Ecumenopolis into the game, which is effectively a city planet like Coruscant in Star Wars, and it also added 3 new megastructures: matter decompressors, mega art installations, and strategic coordination centers. The matter decompressor and the strategic coordination center specifically were a much needed addition to the game. A smaller feature, but a nice one, is the introduction of new Ascension perks and the Galactic Slave Market. This was a pretty substantial addition to the game, but for the same price tag you could go and get Utopia, Federations, Apocalypse, or Overlord. Unless you really want to play as a Megacorp, there just isn't a good reason to get this expansion in place of any of those. But if you already have those, this is definitely a good addition. In 8th, we finally have another story pack, and that is Ancient Relics, which for some older players may be a little bit of a surprise. When Ancient Relics was released, it was pretty underwhelming, to be honest. But recently the devs have been building upon the archaeology aspect of the game, especially in the most recent update 3.7. These additions have bumped Ancient Relics up, but I expect in future updates of this list it could jump up again, assuming that they don't increase the price. But Paradox has never done that before when adding new content to old expansions, so I doubt that will happen. This story pack added new precursor civilizations, as well as relic worlds, which are effectively old broken down Ecumenopolises, and the archaeology aspect of the game was also introduced. Strangely enough, through Ancient Relics you will also gain the Remnants origin, with or without the Federations DLC, which also gives you access to that origin. So if you for some reason really want to play as the Remnants origin, but you don't want to go and buy Federations, you can get this expansion for half the price. Compared to some of the earlier expansions I've already talked about, this does not add that much to the game, but remember that the price tag is drastically lower. This is also a story pack, not a full expansion, so it focuses more on narratives than actual physical superstructures or adding to planets or new government types, so keep that in mind. In 9th, I have another story pack, Leviathans. This adds in the Guardians, which are a bunch of unique space entities that are kind of like space dragons, not to be mixed up with the actual space dragon that you can get through the Aquatics pack, which I'll be talking about quite soon here. I don't want to spoil that much, so I won't go into depth on how the Guardians work or what they do or the stories behind them. Additionally, this also adds enclaves, specifically enclaves focusing on trade or research, and these function as effectively small independent city-states that are independent from the larger empires, and you cannot take them over, but you can destroy them. These offer special bonuses to resources and research that some people use constantly, some people never use at all. I highly suggest using them, and the benefits that they offer are insane. You can even get a 10% bonus across the board to research through these enclaves. The big selling point for this story pack is the War in Heaven, which is effectively 2 fallen empires waking up and deciding that they're going to follow through on their centuries-old grudge match. And when they do this, they don't just go to war with one another, they decide that they're going to pull every other empire in the galaxy into their conflict. There's a lot of different features to this, and it's quite complicated when it actually kicks off, but it's very fun, it's very interesting, and it adds multiple different mechanics when it comes to interacting with these fallen empires. So I won't go farther than that, it's a good time. In 10th, I have put Aquatics, and that is because this species pack is probably the best executed one if I ignore my bias towards robots. This added 2 new origins, the first being Here Be Dragons, which adds a space dragon in your home system that you can interact with, and Ocean Paradise, which starts you out on a massive size 30 ocean world, which is just borderline overpowered planet-wise. Additionally, a new Ascension perk was added called Hydrocentric, which gives you the ability to expand your already large ocean worlds, and it gives you the ability to terraform frozen worlds. This also gives you the ability to build the Water Colossus, which effectively lets you drown a planet, turning it instantly into an ocean world. A new civic is also added in this expansion called Anglers, which effectively are just water farmers. Just like most of the species packs, you get an additional 15 new portraits, all aquatic themed, and you also get an additional aquatic themed robot. There will also be new water themed ships that look absolutely fantastic, and a new advisor voice. You have an additional 4 new name lists that come with this as well, and compared to other species packs, this content-wise is absolutely exceptional. I can't think of a pack that can compete whatsoever. Now, at 16 or so minutes into the video, some of you are probably wondering where the new story pack First Contact is, and it's going to be sitting all the way down here in 11th. And the reason why I have it so low, even though I really enjoyed this pack, is the simple fact that honestly, with the price tag being higher than the other story packs, it just doesn't have the content to match. It's still really fun, it's one of my favorites, but I just won't suggest it be above some of these other DLCs that just offer more. Remember, Distant Stars is 2/3 the price of this pack. First Contact adds 3 new origins that I would say are, on average, better than the majority of origins in any of the other DLCs. And it really does add a unique feel to the game when you select one of these origins. The Broken Shackles origin has you start out as a conglomeration of different species that were forcefully employed by an advanced megacorp civilization. They break free of this civilization and start their own empire. You can actually go and find your old homeworlds for all the species that you start out with by just exploring the galaxy. Most will be pre-FTL civilizations, but there will be another empire with the Payback origin. The Payback origin is the other end of the Broken Shackles origin, where you start out as the species that fought off the exact same megacorp that you have to deal with in Broken Shackles. There is a little bit of a twist here though. Instead of having to deal with low population and instability, you have to deal with debt collectors that will be coming after you for the money that you quote owe the megacorp that you just bought off. If that's not really your style, there is the Fear of the Dark origin, which to date is probably my favorite origin by a long shot. This is the first time in a long time that I've truly felt like the game has been fresh and new. The origin is based off of the 3 Body trilogy of books, and I absolutely love that trilogy, so maybe I'm just biased towards this origin. The spoiler-free explanation is effectively a planet within your system exploded recently, and the species that was living very close to that planet has a little bit of a schism. Some of them don't want to go and explore, they want to build up a military and hide, and some of them still want to explore just like everybody else, and it's your job to decide which route you go. This story pack adds heavily to the First Contact aspect of the game, clearly from the name, and the pre-FTL observation mechanics of the game are pretty well flushed out as a result. It is an all-around good time, but when compared to other DLCs at the same price, it's just not worth it to get this one first. I would go out and get the other story packs or even Aquatics first. Unless you've read the 3 Body trilogy, then this might be the DLC you want to get first. In number 12, I have the Toxoid species pack. This pack adds quite a bit for the price tag and the fact that it is a species pack. With this pack, you get 2 new origins, the first being Overtune, which is a genetic modification based origin that adds a ton of new traits to the game and is all about sacrificing the length of your species' lifetimes in exchange for massive bonuses. Honestly, This is a really fun time, especially if you're a fan of the genetic modification end of the game. They also add the Knights of the Toxic God, which is by far the largest story-based origin in the game, and probably the longest story in the game overall. It's widely regarded as the best story-based origin offered currently by the community. With this pack, you will also get 3 new civics, Toxic Baths, Scavengers, and Relentless Industrialists. The most interesting, I would say, would be Relentless Industrialists, where you slowly turn your planet into a tomb world. If you mix that with the right origin, that could be a pretty fun build. Ignoring the massive amount of traits added via the Overtuned origin, this pack offers 4 new traits: Incubator, Inorganic Breath, Noxious, and Exotic Metabolism. Of course, you also get the 15 new species portraits, as well as the additional robot portrait, and you will also get a new advisor voice, cityscapes, and a pretty cool looking ship set. In 13th, we have the Lithoids species pack. If I didn't let my bias decide where to put Synthetic Dawn, I would probably put it around here as well. This is also a good point to remind you that when it comes to species packs, it's really more about what you're interested in and what you find to be fun than any actual content to money base, as really the difference in content isn't that massive, with the exception of Aquatics and Toxoids, which for some reason are just jam-packed with new content. Now back on Lithoids, this added 15 new Lithoid-based species portraits to the game, and 1 Lithoid robots portrait. It also adds a pretty distinct ship set, all crystal-based, an advisor voice, and several unique Lithoid traits. Finally, it offers 1 origin called Calamitous Birth that replaces your colony ships with meteorites that physically strike planets to colonize them, and there are some benefits and downsides to that. In 14th, I have another species pack, Necroids. This adds a new origin called Necrophage, which lets you turn other pops into your species, effectively zombifying them. As usual, it also adds 15 unique species portraits into the game, all Necroid based, a new ship set that is also very fitting for the theme, and a new advisor voice. You also get an additional 1 robotic portrait, also Necroid themed. This pack also offers 3 new civics, Death Cult, Memorialist, and due to several updates, probably the most interesting one, Reanimated Armies. In 15th, I have the Humanoids species pack. This pack adds 3 new civics, Master Artificers, Pleasure Seekers, and Pompous Purists, as well as the Clone Armies origin, which starts your species out as a clone species that comes with several bonuses and limitations. Where this pack chokes up is the most important part of a species pack. It only adds 10 additional species portraits. The reason why is because there are already human-based species portraits in the game, so you're not really getting as much as you could for the same price. It does compensate a little bit by adding 3 advisor voices instead of just 1, but generally the point of a species pack is to get access to more species. Way down in 16th, we have our final species pack, Plantoids. This is honestly quite painful for me to put so low, as it's one of my favorites, but it just doesn't add that much. This pack only adds 2 new civics, Catalytic Processing and Idyllic Bloom, and 3 new species traits, Phototrophic, Radiotrophic, and Budding. Granted, Budding is probably one of the best traits in the game, however. It does add the standard 15 new portraits, unlike Humanoids, I will say, and it does add a new ship set that is all based off of plants. It does not add a new voice or any new origins, however. This pack really is thin on content when compared to other packs like Lithoids or Humanoids even. This wasn't originally the case, as the Humanoid pack and Lithoids pack were pretty similar in content to Plantoids, but they just have received more content through updates than Plantoids have through updates. Hopefully, eventually the devs will give this pack a little bit more love. And way down in 17th, we have the expansion that probably needs even more love than Plantoids, and that's the Nemesis expansion, which is the only large-scale expansion not to be really close to the top of this order list. This isn't from a lack of trying on the part of the developers of this DLC, however. This expansion is actually quite unique and interesting, but there's just a couple problems with it. Some of the most interesting ideas in Stellaris are actually in this expansion. Through this expansion, you get access to becoming the Crisis, which lets you destroy the entire galaxy and function like a crisis. You can also become Galactic Custodian to protect the galaxy from a crisis. And then if you decide you don't want to relinquish your Custodian powers and instead guide the galaxy through a stronger hand, you can become the Galactic Imperium and start a massive civil war across the entire galaxy, effectively a second crisis. It also adds one of the coolest ship sets possible and expands heavily on espionage. And when you put it like this, it does sound absolutely fantastic. So why is it ranked so far from the top? Well, to be honest, once you become the Crisis once, or you become the Galactic Custodian once, or you become the Galactic Imperium once, you just don't want to do it again. There's no replayability. It's the same thing every time. And the other big sell, espionage, just is not that well flushed out in this game. It's not well executed. It's convoluted, complicated, and not worth time, to be honest. I recently did the first half of an espionage guide, and the second half should be coming soon. And to be honest, when I was diving into the system, finding out how complicated and convoluted it was, it just doesn't line up with the benefits you get. Most of the time, you're not going to waste your envoys on a spy network when they have so many other jobs to do, like contact pre-FTL, interact with other empires, improve your relations with your vassals. With so many other important things to assign your envoys to, for the most part, the only time I see people make spy networks is to gain intel on the composition of ships and the composition of people's planets, so they know what to attack or what not to attack with. Past that, they always reassign their envoys elsewhere. It's just more beneficial. If they make a massive change to espionage just like they have made to archaeology, I would expect to see Nemesis jump up this list just like Ancient Relics did whenever they updated archaeology. I hope that you found this video to be helpful and that it saved you some time and possibly some money. And as a reminder, the best financial decision when it comes to Paradox games is to wait for a sale unless you already have all the DLCs. Then I can see just buying full price when it comes out if you want the newest stuff as fast as possible. Paradox has also started offering what is effectively a Paradox DLC Game Pass, and if you would like me to look into the financial viability of that system and whether or not you should get that pass to save money or lose money, make sure to let me know down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.